On the Way to Greater presents The Center with your host, DC Radical One.
My name is Elijah Lewis. I'm author, motivational speaker. I'm coming to you from the DMV Showcase. Just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about my book, Your Jewels in Your Journey. This book is all about giving us the tools we need to be our optimal self. What I tell people is that we're all on a journey, and on the journey we learn that life lessons are jewels, but it's also the people that we connect with that inspire us to be better that are jewels. And more importantly, we find out that at the end of the day, you yourself are a jewel. If you don't know who you are, it's hard to know where you're going. But more importantly, it's all about also teaching other people how to do the same once you feel inspired yourself. So if you want to learn more about me and my book, you can go to my website, www.elijahlewis.org. You can check out my book, Book Me for Motivational Speaking. I speak on topics such as freedom from life's addictions, the reality of your vision, and many other things. And also to let you know that during the holiday season, what we're doing is that when you purchase a copy of Your Jewels in Your Journey, 22% of that goes to a veteran that's battling PTSD. So we definitely want to give back to our veterans, especially those who are battling mental health issues. Mental health is very important. So it's always a nice way to give back to those who are less fortunate and who have given to us. So just let you know that this is going toward a worthy cause as well. And speaking of that, I'll take a quick moment to read from a chapter from my book, rather. This is going to come from chapter 7, which is always give back and help others. When you make it to being your optimal self, you should think about who is coming behind you. Effective leaders don't necessarily have followers, but they're building leaders to come behind them. For this reason, it is important to always give back and help others. By doing this, you're helping the next generation be able to get to their optimal self with the lessons and opportunities you have been given. If you have been given a gift, then you should be able to share that gift with the world. It goes back to when I said you should have a great role model. Well, sometimes you need to be a good role model as well, and that starts by giving back and helping others. So definitely, if you feel inspired, check me out again on my website. Definitely, if you're in the DMV area, I always do pop-up events like this. So shout out to Dr. Chi-Chi. She's hosting the DMV vendor showcase. So definitely come check us out. We'd love to meet you, see how we can help you out. And at the end of the day, continue to be the jewels that you are, and may you find many jewels on your journey. Thank you.
Greetings, friends, family, allies, and enemies. I am your host, DC Radical One. You have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. Started us on this journey years ago. Here. Before I get to what I want to talk about today, I do want to talk about something that happened earlier this week. To me personally, that opened my eyes to a reality that I have overlooked. So, first of all, let me greet everybody. Greet brother, you got ripped off, BB488. Brother, you got ripped off, BB488. B1 to brother Tony, BB488, straight black pride of brother Elijah, and BB488 to sister Simone. Thank you, good brother. Good to see a sister here. Sisters don't normally pop into the chat on the center. I don't know why that is. I suspect it's because I don't have any positive news, but I report the news. There is no positive news because we're in the war of Armageddon. It's simple. It's that simple. Like I don't know what y'all want me to say. We are in the war of Armageddon. Not in the sense of the biblical mythology, but in the sense of this is the last chance for Black people, and indeed what can be referred to, or what is referred to as humanity, to extricate themselves from the slavery to genocide pipeline, as Brother Irritated Genie calls it. It's just that simple. Kind of hard to find good news in the midst of that. Now, you can find good news by ignoring what the hell's going on, but I'm just going to give you the facts, right? But before I get to that, I just want to talk about something real quick. There's something that was disheartening, but eye-opening. So earlier this week, and I don't think I've told this story publicly. By the way, I will not be on next Saturday, unless something changes during the week, but I will not be on next Saturday. I got something to take care of, but I do plan to be on Tuesday at 7 for the center, and hopefully I'll be able to come on Tuesday and Thursday, so just be on the lookout for that. Let me get back to this real quick. A couple of days ago, right, ran into some young brothers. Yes, pretty college age. I started to say just out of high school, but college age. Brothers, and they saw me. They struck up conversation. You know what I'm saying? Shook my hand, like gentlemen. We started speaking, and they asked me a question. They saw me on my computer. They like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I told them, I said, "Well, actually, doing something very boring, clearing out some old files and stuff like that, so I could get ready to can do some YouTube videos." And then they kind of looked at me like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Yeah." I said, I was like, "What are y'all up to?" He told me, they were in the city, headed to, see some stuff in the city, blah, blah, blah. Oh, cool. Some type of way we got on. I think I may have asked him, but I can't remember. But I asked him about, political climate, what's going on, what they think about stuff. We talked about that a little bit. And then I said, well, let me give you a history lesson real quick, right? And I asked them, I said, "Are you familiar with Huey P. Newton?" And they said no. And I was very disheartened by that, right? Because that means that we are not teaching our children. Now, of course, these are technically adults. I don't really consider anyone adult till they're 21, to be honest. Realistically, I do kind of look at like 24, 25 to being an adult in reality, as far as like the full development of your brain, and because of the slowing down of the mind of people in this society, right? Like, people are being retarded by the poison air, the poison food, the poison water, the poison music that people listen to, etc., etc., etc. Right? So these are developing minds. So they said they had not heard of Huey P. Newton. So I gave them a crash course on Huey P. Newton and the history of Black Panther Party for self-defense. Now you're going to ask me, well, DC, why would you just go directly to Huey P. Newton? One, because these were young men. 2, because time is short and we don't have time to go through the entire history of Black people. 3, because the idea, one thing I want to dispel in the minds of all Black people anywhere near me is the myth of nonviolent social change. There is no such thing. That's the greatest lie of the 20th century. Look at the history of the 20th century and find the nonviolent social change anywhere in the world. Not just in America, anywhere in the world. Right? But that's a lie that we believe in. It's just, I mean, it's just a lie. Right? So we went to Huey P. And I gave him Huey's quotes. One of Huey's quotes is, revolution belongs in the hand of the young. I mean, I don't think there's any more relevant quote for young people who just out of high school than that. Second one, I told him that unarmed people are slaves or subject to slavery at any point. And they looked at me. I said, now, do you know where he actually got these ideas from? And they were like, no. I said, from the Constitution. Right? And they were like, now they were totally confused because they're like, wait a minute, you tell me about some Black dude and he doing all this and that and guns and blah, blah, blah. And now you tell me he got the idea from the Constitution? And they looked at me like, how? Well, and then I had to break down the Constitution. I said, all right, let's break down the Constitution. We're in Washington, D.C. You're either in school now or just out of school. Let's break down the Constitution. I said, what's the First Amendment? And so the one guy was talking more than the other guy, but the other guy that was more quiet was like, yeah, freedom of speech and such and such. I said, exactly, there you go. And so we talked about freedom of speech. I said, so, all right, you have freedom of speech according to the government, right? He said, yeah, according to the Constitution. That means the government can't stop you from saying what you want to say. Like, yeah. I said, so what happens if the government says, nah, shut up? And he thought about it. He's like, we gonna protest. I said, ha, there you go. He knows his rights. We gonna protest. Now let's think about it, right? Because freedom of assembly is in that part with, if I'm not mistaken, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but freedom of assembly is in that part of the Constitution, right? I'm like, okay, cool. Don't protest. I said, now, when you protest, what happens if ICE comes out there, start busting people over the head for protesting? So now when I said that, he's like, he kind of looking like, all right, hold up. You know what I'm saying? He's like, wait. Now, understand, everything I'm saying to them is a real life scenario that they're familiar with because it's currently going on. So he's like, all right. I said, so what do you do? And kind of looked at me like, I don't know, I don't have an answer. I said, what comes after 1? He said, and he kind of looked at me like, come on. I said, 2, right? Yeah, 2. I said, what's the Second Amendment say? So he wasn't sure. The other guy wasn't sure. He was just listening by this point. He's like, all right, hold on. So I told him. I said, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. He said, yeah. I said, shall not be infringed literally means that any law, from my interpretation, any law stopping people, the citizens, from bearing arms is unconstitutional based upon the Second Amendment. Any law. Why? Because the Second Amendment is not to protect you from bears or wolves or even quote unquote Native Americans back in the day. The Second Amendment is to protect you from the government, which means in order for the Second Amendment to protect you from the government, you have to have weapons equal to what? The government. See how that works? Think about it. Now, has the United States at any time, at any point in history when their sovereignty was threatened, have they ever passed out weapons to the citizens to defend themselves? The answer, of course, is no. But have other countries done so when their sovereignty was threatened by the United States? The answer is yes. Thus, other countries, like Libya, for example, believe more in the Second Amendment of the Constitution than the American government does at this time. Right? So, of course, now their head is spinning. So I told them, I'm going to leave you with this. The people in charge, the old people in charge, the old crusty, dusty, dirty, corrupt people in charge of your nation are going to destroy your future if you allow them to. And you're going to have to take your future in your hands and take it back by any means necessary, or you will have no future. That is the message that I left them with. Why did I leave them with that message? It's because it's the absolute, complete, and total truth of the matter at this time. It is my one opportunity to talk to young men and speak to them in a manner in which no other person in their lives has spoken to them, nor in the future will speak to them unless I run into them again. Why? Because we as adults are mostly a bunch of cowards, scared of our own shadow, and certainly scared of anything white, including light that enters the mind to stimulate us to higher thought. That is the reality of where we are. BB482 RBG. And so, what did I learn from that interaction? Because the teacher is also the student, and the teacher learns from the interaction with students. What I learned is we, black men especially, are not teaching our sons what they need to survive the war of Armageddon. Plain and simple. We're not teaching them how to defend themselves physically, spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, economically, and in any other sphere. Right? Think about it. We have something on the internet called the manosphere, but yet very few of the people, there are few, who are teaching manhood. Most of the people on the manosphere aren't qualified to teach manhood because they are not men. It's a reality situation. Now, of course, we know no one head can hold all wisdom, but we have work to do if we're going to survive. And me looking at the disconnect between the older and young generations, not looking good, Bob. It's not looking good. But you got Berthol says, after our conversation yesterday, we've also discovered that media isn't being passed down to youth. That's good and bad. Yeah. Another thing that I think is going to happen as we have this economic downturn and possible collapse. I say possible because I do believe that this collapse will be used to the benefit of the quote unquote elite to bring in the Great Reset. We're in a time where if you can acclimate, if you can collect and accumulate as much media, physical media as you can, as far as deals with our history and our culture, our traditions, our scholars, our elders, the John Henry Clarks of the world, the Yusuf Ben Yakinins of the world, the Malcolm X's of the world, the Dr. Amos Wilsons of the world, the Dr. Francis Cress Welsons of the world, so forth and so on. It may not seem important, but I think it's very important. We have to, in fact, we need a global archive of our teachers and our traditions, and we need to put it somewhere on the continent, and we need to bury it in a central location in a vault for our sons and our daughters. That's what we need. That's the reality of what we need. That is more valuable to us than gold, diamonds, and rubies, because our children do not know who they are. There's a reason why our ancestors built those ginormous, and I know that's not a word, but I'm making it up. It's a word that we've been using so long, a slang term, that it probably is a word now. But anyway, while our ancestors built those ginormous statues in Kemet to remind us of who we are. There is no divinity falling from the sky that is going to save black people, because the divinity has been placed inside of us. And there will be no peace on earth anywhere as long as people who violate and devour children are ruling the planet. That's just a fact. And the idea that you can vote out that kind of evil is ridiculous. They have declared war and are executing their war on the planet. And somebody, somewhere, at some time, has to stand up against evil. With that, I am past my that's my preamble, and then I guess I will actually get to today's show. But I guess before I do, but you got Rudolph says, what's crazy is a black manosphere has created softer men. Meanwhile, the white manosphere has birthed masculinity. Their birds are nevertheless manhood. Research looks macking. It's sick, but it's them. I've heard about this looks maxing thing. It's sort of weird. Brother RBG said, I heard an Egyptian Islamist talking about destroying the temple of Sphinx. So yeah, we need an archive. Yeah, well, in those situations, we just need to I'm gonna just be honest. Can we have real talk here? I know it's YouTube, so we can't have real talk, but let's have real talk as much as we can. When people talk like that, if natural accidents occurred after people flap their gums, they wouldn't talk as much. You know what I'm saying? Like those of us from the hood know that a lot of people do a lot of talking until their chin gets checked. Then all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying, it gets quiet in the room. You know what I'm saying? Like if you ever seen a dude just get absolutely crushed and around a bunch of people, you'd be amazed at how quiet it gets. Like you don't hear nothing from nobody. You know what I'm saying? It don't even matter. Don't matter who's there. You know? But yeah. And then after that, all you hear is you all right, and get an ambulance and all that good stuff. Y'all know how it goes. All right. So what is today's discussion supposed to be? Today's discussion is the economic chickens are coming home to roost. Here's the reality of the situation. And we have talked about this before. So this is kind of an update. President Trump is either a complete fool, and I know y'all want me to stop right there. He's either a complete fool, or he is using the appearance of being a complete fool to maximize the destruction of the global world economy. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm not gonna make the assumption that he's a complete fool. I think so, but that's a heck of a way to for you to get away with destroying the global economy and just make it look like you're an idiot in the process. You're like, oh man, I ain't know what I was doing, which helps usher in the Great Reset. So speaking of the Great Reset, we're going to go to the World Economic Forum's page, and it says, how did the Strait of Hormuz become so important? And let's look at that part. Will it stay that way? Let's get into the article. Now, it says the narrow centuries became crucial for the global economy when the surrounding region emerged as a key source of energy. Its effective closure during the Iran war has reinvigorated interest in alternative trade routes, but there are no simple solutions. In a world where people are getting dumber and dumber, where there are no simple solutions, things are in trouble. It's been an object of fascination at least since Milton name-checked it 360 years ago in his poem, Paradise Lost. Heard of the poem, never read it. European kingdoms fought over it in galleons, and the Portuguese left behind a vestige of colonialism in the form of an abandoned fortress that still looms over one of the world's most vital waterways. The Strait of Hormuz has now been effectively sealed by the chaos of the Iran war for nearly 2 months, starving the global economy of essentials. The 39-kilometer wide passage normally serves as a primary funnel for energy, fertilizer, and critical raw materials like sulfur. But fully free navigation might not be realistic for a long time. Dire consequences are predicted. That begs the question, how did we come to rely so heavily on something that could be rendered inoperative virtually overnight? Now look at this. Goodness me. Let's look at this graph. This graph says it has liquefied natural gas, right? And crude oil. So the crude oil as of February 18th, I believe that's 126.8. I wonder, is this measured in million barrels? Doesn't really say, but let's just say this is million barrels, right? 128 million. And then up to the 26th, 179. And then as of May 8th, hey, that's a zero. Hold up. Wait a minute. It can't be right. Zero? Okay. That's great. Now, liquefied natural gas in February 17th, 177, down to 107 on the 26th. There's nothing here. There's nothing here from March to April 19th, to April 22nd. There's nothing. That's the chart, ladies and gentlemen. So, just based on that, what appears to be happening, and RBG is right ahead, is that the Strait of Hormuz is effectively non-functional. Now, there are a couple of things happening in response to that. One, the Belt and Road Initiative that China was already starting has been kicked into gear, and Iran is shipping some of their oil to China via overland, via railroad. There's a chance that the United States may bomb those railways and stop that from happening. If that happens, how China responds will determine the next phase of this war. Right? Two, another thing that's happening is that, y'all remember when the United States took over Venezuela and said, we're taking your oil? Well, the United States is selling their oil to countries, I believe mostly European countries at this time, from their reserves. And I think that they're going to use the Venezuelan oil as a backup, but that has to be taken from Venezuela, brought to America, and then refined, because it's not the same quality of oil. So even though Trump did that as preparation and as a backup plan, it's not the same type of oil. So it's still not sufficient. Now, does that mean that the United States will run out of oil? No. But does that mean that the United States oil reserves will run low? Because they're trying to fill in a capacity through the rest of the world, or at least their allies, not the rest of the world, but their allies? Yes. It's going to be interesting. But let me get back. Oh, and what does that mean for us here that live in the United States? Your gas is going up again. We're talking about probably at some point. Now, those of you who are in the West Coast, those of you in LA or whatever, you already there. I'm sure you're already well over $5 a gallon. We're talking about possibly $6 in the rest of America, $7 in LA, maybe $8 in LA, $7 in America at the most. Other people are in danger of running out. In addition to that, you have the whole fertilizer issue, which is a much bigger issue in reality because it affects food. Like, you can find a way to live without fuel. It ain't gonna be pretty. You can't find a way to live without food, not for long. And the fuel thing, depending on your infrastructure, that's dangerous too, because you have systems that clean your water, or at least are supposed to. Those systems become compromised, like they did in Cuba, right? Now, brother, you got ripped off says the issue started with the sanctions on Russia and the Nord pipeline sabotage. it was an explosion, but it was a sabotage, right? And so one thing that I have noticed is that whenever something bad happens, someone somewhere takes advantage of it, whether by making it worse and then monetizing it, or making it worse so that people suffer. That's always the case. We saw it with C-19. We saw it with the stock market, housing market crash in, what was that, 09, 08? And that is what there was an author named, I believe, Naomi Wolf. Oh, man, I forgot the shock doctrine. Yeah, the shock doctrine. That's what she called that. So let me get back to this article so I can get to this video. It says the Strait has been strategically important since the days of astrolabs, but it secured its place in the modern economy around the time of Bahrain's first major oil strike in 1932. That was followed by Saudi Arabia's first big oil strike 6 years later. A Saudi oil port was promptly opened not far away on the Gulf, which would eventually become the world's biggest, and barrels began flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. So interesting. That date is interesting just for it's just interesting that time frame. On the northern shore of the Gulf, Iran had its first big oil strike decades earlier. The formation of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company followed, and its nationalization would play a fateful role in the country's future relations with the West. Major discoveries were also made in Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, and Qatar, all nestled around a body of water separated from the high seas by a single, increasingly coveted exit point. By the 1950s, oil production flowing through the Strait of Hormuz was powering a massive international rebuild in the wake of World War II, interrupted temporarily by a British blockade of the Strait in 1951. British warned Iran on taking over oil bled a headline about the ill-fated reaction to nationalization. Clearly, the oil-producing countries utilizing the Strait would have to organize if they wanted to maximize the benefits of their abundant resource. In 1960, four of them joined together with Venezuela to form OPEC. And I believe OPEC is what the oil producing. What is? Y'all help me out with what it means. And what's funny is I just heard it while I was watching the video earlier, and now I can't. Anyway, the Strait status as a flashpoint endured. A regional conflict in the 1980s gave rise to the Tanker War, when Iraq began attacking ships carrying Iran's exports through the Gulf. Now, we know now that this was at the behest of the United States. Anyway, Iran eventually responded in kind. It mined the strait and even threatened a blockade, but stopped short because the move was deemed too extreme. Oil prices jumped and then recovered. Iran, man, they try very hard to be moderate, and I understand that. But sometimes moderation, it can be seen by your enemies as weakness, and so you just have to go hard. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to just punish people severely so they understand that you're not playing. Brother, you got ripped off. Says Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Thank you, brother. Like I said, I saw it in the video and I just couldn't come up with nothing. Now, says reasons to rely on the strait only multiplied. Production of natural gas in the Gulf accelerated in the early part of this century. Others exports much of it liquefied and loaded into cryogenic containers on ships pointing east towards the strait. Increased by 800% between 2000 and 2023. It's not just gas, it's the many vital things that can be manufactured as gas byproducts. Fertilizer, for example. Qatar utilizes a massive gas capacity to churn out the most popular form of nitrogen fertilizer in large quantities. Sulfur is another byproduct. About half of the seaborne trade in this crucial element of battery production normally transits the strait. Here is where the inevitable search for alternatives to transporting through the Strait of Hormuz gets tricky. Oil and gas can at least theoretically be shipped through pipelines. Saudi Arabia has already ramped up oil exports via a 1,200-kilometer pipeline that reaches the Red Sea as a way of bypassing the strait. But something like fertilizer or sulfur requires transport on a ship, train, or truck. Routing these things away from the strait would therefore require new infrastructure, which means serious investment. There's been talk of building new bridges, roads, and regional rail network. In the meantime, there seems to be competition underway over which side can throttle traffic through the Strait of Hormuz more effectively. That's troubling in a way that transcends location. The strait may be narrow, but it's not entirely unique. There are plenty of other potential choke points in the world. These are mostly allowed to remain open to free-flowing trade. It wasn't always like this. At one point, around the same time that it built a fortress that remains on Hormuz Island, Portugal effectively operated the strait as a sort of toll booth. This wasn't so uncommon in the past. There are remnants of these kinds of checkpoints still visible on the shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland to bypass to mountain passes in the Caucasus. In the Caucasus. My bad. I don't know why I said it like that. Returning to a system that could change daily life in ways most of us probably can't fathom. So here's the reality of the situation. They talked about Saudi Arabia building a pipeline. I mean, that's cool. But here's what all the Gulf countries are going to have to figure out. How are you going to defend it? You see, this is what has taken place that they didn't talk about in this article. Every country, every Gulf state that's part of OPEC sided with the United States against Iran. None of those countries can defend themselves from Iran. Iran has, and I can't find the article, so I'm going to say that I saw this, but I'm not 100% sure. But if it is true, I mean, it's understandable. Iran has stated that they will topple every government that sides with, in the region, that sides with Israel. And they can do it. None of those governments can do anything to stop Iran from toppling them. They can destroy their infrastructure to make those countries unlivable. And they can send their fighters to all of these countries and simply overwhelm the limited militaries they had. Those countries were dependent upon the United States. That's part of the petrodollar agreement. They were dependent on the United States with their defense. But what happens when your defender can't defend himself? The United States can defend their own oil bases, right? So how are they going to defend themselves from Iran? You see how this works? So it's going to be interesting because Iran could become a regional power that no one in the region could deal with. So that's just something to look forward to in the future. Now, I have this video that I want to play that's just going to talk about the ramifications of the war and how it will affect us here. So y'all know how we do because we have regulars here. You know what I'm saying? Turn down the music and turn up the video.
Is apparently jeopardizing the global food supply. Now you might be wondering, how is that even possible? Well, it's possible because much of the fertilizer that the world needs in order to grow food comes from that region of the world. And right now, the Strait of Hormuz is not really available for shipping fertilizer to various parts of the globe. Now, this is a little talked about consequence of this war against Iran. And this conflict is going to drive up the price of all sorts of chemicals, including fertilizers like urea, nitrogen, and ammonia. Now, these chemicals are critical for food production, and much of it is in fact produced in the Gulf region. So 5 primary fertilizer exporters, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and Bahrain, rely heavily on the Strait of Hormuz to export their wares. And as we've learned, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively shut down by the Iranians in retaliation for the US-Israeli attacks against them. Making matters worse, the United States stupidly went into this war right before the spring planting season. So how bad is this? Well, according to the New York Times reporting, and they tend to provide cover for these types of conflicts, but even they had to admit, collectively, these countries supply more than 1/3 of the world's trade in urea, the dominant form of nitrogen fertilizer, as well as nearly 1/4 of another type, ammonia. According to data that was compiled by the International Fertilizer Association, the same 5 countries produce nearly 1/5 of phosphate fertilizers. So one major source of urea, Qatar Energy, halted production this past week when it lost access to natural gas after strikes from Iranian drones and missiles. But look, for the most part, believe it or not, factories are still producing fertilizer. It's just that the Strait of Hormuz, way more important than people suspected, I guess. So they're unable to transport the fertilizer. So yeah, production has been harmed a little bit, but the bigger issue is transporting the fertilizer. And they're having trouble shipping it. And we don't know how long this disastrous war is going to go on. So the longer it goes on, the bigger problem this becomes. So this does threaten the global food supply. And while wealthier countries will likely just pay a lot more for their food, meaning us, the United States, we will likely see even more inflation when we go to the grocery store. The real victims of all this are the poor and developing countries that stand to go hungry as a result of this. And so we should also note that Trump did position the United States in a uniquely terrible position as this fertilizer shock hits the markets. Trump's tariffs had already raised the cost of imported fertilizer, forcing many farmers to hold off stocking up. The White House exempted fertilizers from its latest tariffs last month, But millions of tons of urea cannot quickly be summoned from points around the globe. So, what are the experts saying about all of this? Well, why don't we go to Chris Lawson? He's the vice president of market intelligence and prices at the London-based commodities research firm known as CRU. He told the New York Times, quote, "It's bad. There's no other way of putting it. The world is highly reliant on fertilizer and associated raw materials supplied out of that region," meaning the Gulf. Jan William Earsman has a similar take. She's a chemical engineer and fertilizer expert at the Leiden University in the Netherlands. She concedes that the price of food will go up. So my fellow Americans, what do you think? Maybe it's just a small price to pay for a foreign country to hit its goals so they can expand their borders, annex land, and continue terrorizing the Middle East. Congratulations.
Yep, and that was Anna Kasparian. I believe that's how you say her name. From the Young Turks. If you're familiar with Anna, if you're familiar with Anna, she does not like Israel, and that's all I'm gonna say. So shout out to her for just being like, yeah. Let's see, brother, you got ripped off. Left some messages. Let's go back and see what he has to say. Says, as of 2022, OPEC accounts for 38% of global oil production and holds an estimated 79.5% of the world's proven oil reserves, predominantly in the Middle East. While this percentage represents a relatively small fraction of total petroleum usage, the industry is critically dependent on petrochemicals derived from oil and natural gas. Feedstock dependency. Nearly 99% of pharmaceutical feedstocks and reagents are derived from petrochemicals. And the natural gas role in the US, most petrochemicals are produced from natural gas rather than from crude oil. Also, by the way, did I set this up? Did I? Let me know if y'all can see that. Let's set up a poll. And okay, there we go. That's a poll. This is a new feature on StreamYard, and I just wanted to see how it worked. So y'all can tap in with the poll at your leisure. After y'all vote out, I guess I'll bring it back up. Anyway, so that is that's where we are right now. And as far as I know, at this moment, the conditions as far as the Strait of Hormuz have not changed, right? There was, but I wanted to go to something that was tangentially related as far as like food and fuel and things like that, because I saw something and I don't think I had a chance to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it here. Check this out. It says what Iran's rain theft claim, got too much stuff out of it, and how it's linked to the U.S. radars, Israel's weather engineering machines. Now, y'all tell me, have we talked about this before? Yes or no? Because here's what's happening. Iran and the surrounding region have been in drought for years. About 15 years ago, the Iranian president at the time said that the U.S. was responsible. Now, of course, if you say that in 2011, people are gonna look at you and like, what is this dude talking about? You know, this what they call it, this full tin foil hat stuff. Well, here's what happened. Iran blew up some, you know, they've been blowing up all types of radars and all types of other stuff while they're blowing up these US bases. China has been giving them satellite information. China told them apparently, hey, there's a research facility here that y'all might want to check out and or take out. And Iran did, and then all of a sudden it started raining. So they went from drought to having, I mean, I'm talking, when I say drought, I'm talking about like their aquifers and their dams and stuff were like almost dry, that kind of drought. And then suddenly they've had rain. So do I have a video? I think I have a video. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna watch this video, then we're gonna get into this article.
Zygmunt Brzezinski said, who was the advisor to Jimmy Carter. He started the Trilateral Commission. He's the father of Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe Ball. And
Big News, I think is how you pronounce it. It's Big News Brzezinski.
He said technology will make available to the leaders of major nations techniques for conducting secret warfare, of which only a bare minimum of the security forces need be appraised. Techniques of weather modification could be employed to produce prolonged periods of drought or storm. Well, son of a gun, we've got evidence that that's exactly what they've been doing in Iran. Iranian expert accuses U.S. Israel of weather manipulation to deepen the drought. An Iranian water resource specialist has accused the United States and Israel of manipulating regional weather patterns to intensify Iran's severe drought. According to the Middle Eastern Media Research Institute, they claimed in a July 30th interview on the Iranian YouTube channel that both nations had been deliberately diverting clouds away from Iran for over 4 decades.
Well, that's a violation of the treaty not to do that, Jimmy.
That is. There's a treaty, international treaty that was signed in the 70s that made it illegal, or they all agreed to not use weather modification.
Because we did it in Vietnam, too.
Because we did it in Vietnam. Iran's rain clouds aren't being stolen, but its drought is worsening. So the establishment media comes out, immediately tries to make you think that's wrong, that's not happening, because that's what the establishment media does.
Is Iran being forced to use their plague of bees weapon on Israel in retaliation?
Iran's embassy in Kabul posted a strange tweet. They say in it, after Iran destroyed the secret center for cloud seeding and weather manipulation in the United Arab Emirates, everything changed overnight. And with the end of the secret center, the region's weather map flipped completely. So it's raining so much, their reservoirs were down to 1%. They were thinking they would have to move people out of Tehran, a city of 9 or 10 million people. They were going to move everybody because they had no water. But now we opened the gates of Iraq's largest dam due to 100% capacity. The dam hasn't reached 100% capacity in years. Underground water sources have started to overflow, and this is what it looks like. That's what it looks like now in Iran. Water everywhere. Water coming up from under the ground. And here, Iran destroyed American. So when Iran hit, they say they destroyed their weather modification plants, right? When Iran was hitting all the Gulf states, because we had bases there. And then they also took out their weather modification. This is what the reporting is, right? So nobody can confirm this for sure, but this is certainly what it looks like, and especially after Iran Kabul tweeted that out. Here's what Tucker Carlson and our good friend Dane Whittington had to say about it.
And Tucker, they're being used as a form of warfare. And we know that. We have countries like Iran, constantly demonized, of course, as you well know. Immediately after 9/11, we have the list of countries to be targeted given to General Wesley Clark. ballistic clearly existed before 9/11 even occurred. Subsequently, every one of those countries, every one of them endured a once in 1,000 year drought. Statistically, mathematically, that's impossible without climate intervention operations. And we have the leader of Iran on the floor of the UN, on film, on the record, stating NATO was cutting off their precipitation. We have Iranian top scientists recently stating NATO's been doing this for 40 years. Destabilize the food supply by destabilizing the rain, and you destabilize the population.
Here's more from Dane.
I'm saying that we know the technology exists to steer storms of that size. So why would we think they're not using these type of operations? We have historical precedent. Project Popeye in Vietnam was so successful at controlling precipitation. By 1976, they passed the INMOD treaties forbidding weather manipulation for wartime purposes, but not over a country's own population. The Chinese government has long since openly stated they were engineering snowstorms with endothermic reacting elements. These are patented elements that can literally transition a rain event into snow. They were so successful in China, they caused billions of dollars of damage to Beijing, at which time they began to be less open about this. Everybody covered it. CNN, Popular Science, The Guardian. But if you bring that up here, suddenly you're a tinfoil hat wearing nutcase.
Brother, you got ripped off, jumped ahead, brother. Exactly. Let me bring up what the brother said. So tell me again that African countries are responsible for their own famines, excuse me. Here's the thing, right? To the brother's point. And I thought it was part of this video, but it's not. And I can't find the video, but I had a video where the gentleman said, and I believe it's part of the same Tucker Carlson interview, if I'm not mistaken, where he said that we have these bases in the Middle East and Africa, and then we have these famines near those bases. That's what he said. He said, and Africa. That's what got my attention to make me be like, hold up, let me look into this stuff. What in the world? So if you think that these famines and these weather catastrophes and these things that happen in Africa, and they always seem to happen in Africa, are coincidental, or that's just the way things happen, or God did it. No, the devil did it. And I'm not talking about the devil under the ground. I'm talking about the devil who uses high science to cause destruction. What's interesting, what's so interesting, man, is I remember that in the Supreme Wisdom Lessons of the Nation of Islam, they talk about weather manipulation. And basically say that man has the power to manipulate weather. That's 100 years ago. And here we are, weather warfare is being used. Now, what's interesting is, remember they talk about that, what I believe they call it INMOD treaties. I'm not sure what the acronym stands for completely, but remember they talked about in those treaties, you cannot use weather against another nation, but you can use it, against your own citizens. And y'all remember in North Carolina where they had that weird weather, they had floods all up in the mountains and all types of stuff like that, and white people were saying they never seen nothing like it, and something is wrong and it's not natural and this and this and that. I don't know if y'all remember that, but come to find out that those people underneath those mountains that those people lived on is a mine of lithium. It's just a mountain of lithium worth, I don't even know how much money. And a lot of people lost their property and had to move. And then voila, we find lithium there. That happened in North Carolina. Right here in America, right in the south of the good old USA. So, weather modification is real. Brother RBG says HARP. Yeah, that was the first one I learned of HARP back in I think first time I heard about HAARP was probably 2010, maybe. And there was a good book called Angels Don't Play This Harp that was Amazon had available back in the day. So, brothers and sisters, there are no coincidences. I'm going to paraphrase Minister Farrakhan. It's the law of cause and effect. If you hear something go bang, somebody's doing the banging. If you see unnatural events in weather, someone is causing it, usually for the destruction of other people. Let's see. Baba Otunji says that UN Weather Modification Treaty was initiated in 1978. Every member of the UN signed that treaty except the US. Well, I'm shocked that Israel signed it because they normally don't sign anything. They just normally disregard everything like it doesn't apply to them. Brother, you got ripped off says, as we're learning, this not only cripples the food supply, but also the ability to create tech, weaponry, and AI, which depends on water as a coolant. Yeah, but it did not affect Iran's capacity to build missiles, much as they tried. So let's read this article real quick because we are about halfway through the show. It says, what Iran's reign, y'all ain't asked me that enough to turn it up here. What Iran's rain theft claim and how it's linked to U.S. radars, Israel's weather imaging machines. As heavy rains, unexpected snow, and decrease in temperatures blows new life into vegetation and dams fill up to 100% of their capacity, the Iranian social media is abuzz with quote-unquote conspiracy theories. Now, let me just say this real quick about conspiracy theories. Let's think about where we are. The entire planet apparently is being ruled by a group of people who have a global, international child trafficking ring where they send underage children to world leaders. That no conspiracy. Once you tell me that that's real, there's nothing beyond that, right? Because if you do that, you do anything. If you will do untoward, unsaid things towards children, there's nothing that's out of bounds for a group of people who will do that. So the idea that something is a conspiracy theory at this point is laughable. It's just an unproven conspiracy and a proven conspiracy. That's where we're at. Now, back to the article. It says many pro-Iran social media handles are sharing videos of sudden weather change in Iran as the country witnesses massive rain, snow, and drop in temperatures. The Iranian handles are claiming that the weather change has happened because Iran has destroyed America's radar and Israeli weather engineering machines that used to manipulate the country's weather. Notably, Iran has been parched by continuous drought for over a decade. The empty reservoirs and cracked lake beds were enough to tell the water crisis story. However, after a war of around 50 days, the weather appears to have turned favorable. Yes, we would like to read more. As heavy rains, unexpected snow. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. My bad. I already read that. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. This is someone called the White Rabbit on Twitter saying Iran destroys weather modification machines in Gulf states. Iran has reportedly destroyed weather modification machines in Gulf states, and almost immediately the weather shifted. Rain followed, and shortly after that, snow began to fall. I'm not sure what the weather normally is in Iran, but I don't know if they normally get snow in April. I don't know. It says the social media users claim that Iran struck advanced U.S. radar installations, which they did. That was a fact. And Israeli weather machines during the recent conflict. That we didn't know. They claim that while Iran targeted high-tech systems, including the THAAD missile defense and The 1.1 billion FPS 132 early warning radar encounter, the strike perhaps also disabled a regional network of weather manipulation. According to those claims, these installations weren't just for defense. They were allegedly being used to quote unquote steal clouds, diverting Mediterranean moisture away from Iran and towards neighboring rivals. Proponents of this theory point to the timing. The radars were hit and almost immediately the drought ended. It says massive rainstone temperature, significant why. There's no more weather engineering after American radars were destroyed in the region. What is rain stealing? The concept of cloud theft isn't new in Iranian political discourse. It's a narrative that has bubbled up periodically since at least 2018. At its core, the accusations suggest that foreign powers, specifically the US, Israel, and the UAE, use geoengineering to manipulate atmospheric patterns so that rain clouds release their moisture before they ever reach Iranian airspace. High-ranking officials have previously pointed to satellite imagery showing thick snow cover on the mountains of Turkey and Afghanistan, while the Iranian side of the same border remained brown and dry. To many, this visual contrast was proof of an invisible wall built by technology. Now it says, while the idea of weather machines sounds like science fiction, it often serves to mask more grounded, albeit complex, regional disputes. The Middle East is currently home to very real water wars, but they are fought with concrete and policy rather than weather lasers. Now they're going to go on and tell us about dams and so forth and so on. But let's just be completely honest. If you have decades worth of drought and suddenly just like that you have rain, it's not a natural phenomenon. There's no way around it. This is weather manipulation and weather warfare, plain and simple. Now, it's amazing that if they had just left Iran alone, Iran would not have been able to do anything. But it made by pressing Iran, a year ago, June, nearly a year ago, with the 12-day rule, they basically forced Iran to upgrade their technology. They used the Chinese satellites, and voila, here we are with Iran free from weather manipulation. Like it is, I just think it's fascinating. So what does that tell us about America? Because you can use this on your own citizens, apparently. How do we know that America hasn't been using this on various areas in America where the black population is more prominent? How do we know, for example, let's think about this. How do we know that Hurricane Katrina was natural? We know that they blew up the levees, but how do we know it was natural at all? I just talked about the situation in North Carolina, right? How long has this been going on? Because we know they've been doing other things, here in America. That's just something for us to ponder, right? Because we know the type of people we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who are just dealing with people who are psychopaths. Long story short. So anyway, I want to get back to more of the economic side, but I thought that was interesting. Now, wait a minute, hold up. Did I have one more article on that? Yeah, I do. Y'all, all right, here we go. Says that Iran just destroyed a U.S.-Israel weather weapon ending its drought. Viral conspiracy explained. This from the Economic Times. It says several pro-Iranian accounts on X have claimed Iran's weather has changed drastically after the country allegedly destroyed a secret cloud seeding and weather modification center in the UAE. But this is claiming a totally different place. According to one such post, Iraq and Iran suddenly get heavy rain every single week. Temperatures have dropped a full 5 degrees Celsius. Iran's devastating drought is over. floods have returned so strongly that the government had been planning to move the capital from Tehran because of water shortages. The center wasn't just research, it was designed to destroy agriculture, livestock in Iran and Iraq by triggering artificial drought and desertification, the Post added. Now, here's what's deep as I think about it. Desertification in the Sahel is a major problem, right? The Sahara is growing. The Sahara is on a natural cycle for thousands of years where it becomes a desert, it dries out, the water goes underground, and then over the years, the water begins to seep towards the surface. The soil changes and it becomes a grassland. This occurs over thousands of years. What do we know that the desertification that we're seeing hasn't just interrupted the natural cycle and isn't being engineered by those bases that are in Africa? Plain and simple, we don't. But thanks to Iran, we now have an idea. This says mind-blowing. After Iran took out the secret cloud seeding and weather modification center in UAE, everything flipped overnight. I dropped full 5 degrees Celsius. Can somebody tell me how much that is? I believe that's would be 8 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Having your temperature drop 10 degrees Fahrenheit in spring, it's crazy. Let's see. We got Mike. Is that Mike, the health ranger? Yep, that's the health ranger. U.S. government used weather weapons against Iran. Full video explainer. So he got a whole video on it. And the Daily Iran News, massive rain, snow, and temperature has dropped significantly. Why? So a lot of people have come to the conclusion that that's the case. Now, let's go to the next part. It says the Iran war's forever costs will exceed immediate pain for customers. It says the headline grabbing economic effects of the Iran war are immediate, directly felt in daily consumers' lives. Pump prices are up 35%, and the spiking cost of a barrel of oil is sure to spur broader inflation. Isn't that just what everybody needs? And as the Century Foundation has documented, the tens of billions of dollars the Trump administration is spending on munitions, personnel, and logistics could instead easily fund major investments in things like healthcare, childcare, education that would actually benefit the public. Yet, as past conflicts have repeatedly shown, the first order war expenses and economic impacts are merely the tip of the iceberg. There are good reasons why American consumer sentiment is crumbling. The bigger cost of war will become apparent in the long term. Some are quantifiable dollar amounts that take years to reveal themselves. Others manifest as deep economic burdens and distortions that other factors will simply amplify in unpredictable ways. Any serious discussion of this war's domestic impact must begin with a sobering and accurate appraisement of its terrible long-term costs, which the government, society, and American families will continue to pay long after the fighting subsides. These economic effects are a primary reason why Americans and their representatives should do everything in their power to stop the war, especially by withholding funding. Now, let's just be realistic. That ain't gonna happen, but hey, it is what it is. If the U.S. and Israeli assault on Iran were morally and strategically warranted, American voters might make an informed choice to assume the burden and accept its social, financial, and economic sacrifices. The reality is quite the opposite. The war is weakening America and destabilizing the world. It is also unpopular, unprovoked, illegal, and completely unjustified. This will make the war's economic poisons all the more bitter for Americans to swallow. We don't have to ask whether or not this person is for the war against them. Now, says the long-term cost of some of America's previous wars have already been calculated. The Brown University Cost of War Project has produced the definitive estimates of the cost of the global war on terror, with a special focus on the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's come up with a total bill of $8 trillion. So the Iran-Iraq war cost $8 trillion, which is about 20% of the total debt that America is currently in. That is massive. Just over a quarter of that figure is directly spent on military operations, but a bigger portion is the cost of long-term care for veterans, an increasing percentage of whom in modern wars qualify for lifetime disability payments. Annual post 9/11 global war on terror costs in this category won't peak until 2050. So here's what they're saying. Because of better medical care, instead of people just, hold up. Brother, you got ripped off, says 5 degrees Celsius is 41 degrees Fahrenheit. That's insane. That's insane. That's like going from 100 degrees to 60 degrees overnight. That is insane. Thank you for that, bro. That is insane. Like, I'm shocked. I knew I was off, but that is wow. That's amazing. So yeah, so you basically been having a heat wave every spring for 4 decades, and they wow. That's unbelievable. Oh man, that caught me off guard. I'm not gonna lie. Now it says, then there's the interest the government has to pay on loans it takes out to finance those other costs. From 2001 to 2022, interest payments alone top $1 trillion. And debt finance war spending makes it more expensive for the government to borrow in general. Costs like long-term veteran care and debt servicing are almost certainly not factored into the $200 billion that the Department of Defense reportedly requesting for the war. The White House hasn't explained what it plans to spend the money on except to kill bad guys, quote unquote, as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth put it. In fact, most of the long-term costs are never reflected on any budget explicitly connected to the wars that generate them. They are essentially the shadow cost of military action, a long fiscal hangover that no one talks about when they beat the drums of war. Recall that George W. Bush predicted that their invading Iraq would cost the United States $50 to $60 billion, which back then was crazy. Bush Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul Wolfowitz, I remember that clown, even claimed that the war would pay for itself in Iraqi oil revenue, which was a lie. That's why the White House and Congress should be compelled to produce a much more honest accounting of such war costs for initiating military action. It says, making life unaffordable. Odious as these hidden budget costs of war are, they're even more complex and long-lasting macroeconomic harm stemming from its downstream effects. A self-inflicted energy shortage, an oil price spike, an inflationary spiral, and cascading interruptions of supply chains and trade. The upshot of all of this for the average American is that life will become even more unaffordable than it already is. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz is driving oil prices higher, which doesn't just increase the cost of commuting for millions of Americans. High fuel costs also have inflationary effects on everything Americans buy that takes oil or gas to get to the market, including not only products like fertilizer and plastics that have gas or petroleum input, but also anything that is transported, since diesel prices have increased even more than gasoline. Yeah, I remember seeing diesel prices close to $6, and that probably was a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah. The war has also disrupted supplies of helium, an important component in semiconductor production, which could trigger more widespread shortages of goods ranging from cars to dishwashers, as occurred during the pandemic. These disruptions will linger. Supply chains can break overnight, but take months or sometimes years to recover. In other words, this crisis will likely lead to inflation, broad-based price increases in the economy. Inflation also drives up the cost of individual borrowing, like mortgage rates, which have increased over 4 occasions already since the war began. So homeowners could be stuck for years or decades with higher monthly payments or priced out of the market altogether because of the wartime spike. The Iran war's harm to American consumers is of grave concern to overall economic growth, since consumption is the biggest element of the primary measurement of the national economy, the gross domestic product, or GDP. Pressure on consumers, who will consume fewer goods and services as price levels go up, could have an impact on the already fragile labor market. Is a major reason why economists say the war could cause a recession. Let me stop right here and just say this. It's not good, Bob. I know I keep saying that, but I wanted to get to this article because I wanted people to see and hear how decisions made here in this city, Washington, D.C., but not in the area where I'm at, affect you and your daily lives and cost you money and could eventually cost you your life. Everything is connected. And bro, you got ripped off. Says, as a disabled vet, I can tell you, you have to fight like hell to even receive those benefits that they have set aside for us. So he's saying the shenanigans are already afoot, and the doo-doo has not hit the old fan yet. Not good, Bob. Not good. So y'all gonna say, well, DC, what do you recommend? Well, I'm gonna recommend the same thing I've been recommending. We are going to have to find ways to collaborate to survive. There's a shrinking pool of like-minded people, right? Yeah, it just is. And you're gonna have to find some way to coordinate and work with those people to ensure your survival. This is going to get ugly. It's just a matter of how ugly. It's a matter of whether the people who have been manipulating the president, how much they need America to survive, or for how much longer. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to, in my opinion. Right? Otherwise, you can see this thing crack in ways. Because think about it. They've just made a movie, Civil War, a few years ago. We've talked about that before. We think that movie just came out of nowhere for no reason. Then the Obamas, didn't they have didn't they make a movie showing the disintegration of America or some type of natural disaster or something? I can't really remember. Y'all help me out with that. But this is where we're going to. So I am going to I got one more video. I think I got two more, but I got one that's ready to load up. We're gonna watch this video as they talk about the ramifications of the war, economic ramifications.
Starts in the Middle East is quickly moving through the global supply chain, and soon likely into your grocery bill. From corn, wheat, and soybeans to bread, meats, and more.
We're talking about all the crops and all the food products that we consume on a daily basis.
At the center of it all, fertilizer. About 1/3 of the world's fertilizer ingredients moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, ships only getting through that key route in a trickle, causing a spike in fertilizer prices, with urea a major component at its highest price since 2022.
Anything that is grown and that requires fertilizers, which is most of everything that we consume, is potentially affected. Across the world, the ripple effects are going to be quite significant.
In Kenya, farmers are lining up early in the morning, hoping to secure just a few bags of fertilizer. This farmer saying fertilizer shortages are already making it harder to plant. And the World Food Program warns an extra 45 million people are at risk for acute hunger this year.
Price rises will be passed on to ordinary families who often are already struggling.
Concerns growing in the United States as well. Already, about 13% of households are food insecure here, with more than 7 million facing very low food security. Higher diesel prices adding even more pressure too, raising the cost of not only running farm equipment, but also transporting food to stores.
Energy prices are affecting us.
Will Harris, a fourth-generation cattle farmer in Georgia, says that rising fertilizer prices are hitting agricultural production across the country.
As beef prices have gotten higher and higher and higher, I fear that will eventually impact my volume of business.
Even before the war, farmers were already under pressure, from rising costs to tariffs and global competition. Last year, 315 farm bankruptcies were filed, up 46% from 2024. The federal government has stepped in with some relief, including $12 billion in aid announced last year. But now, the ongoing conflict with Iran adding another layer of strain.
We have had to raise prices, and we continue to raise prices.
The latest inflation report from before the war showing beef prices at record highs, up about 15% from last year. As those ripple effects build for farmers and for consumers, the question now, how much more can they afford to pay?
All right. Hold on. Okay. So that was a very quick report telling us what we kind of know at this point. It's funny they end with how much more can consumers afford to pay? Not much more. Not much more. Let me get back to this article real quick because I think this is the next to last article. No, actually I got two more. My bad. Said there are further macroeconomic harms from the Iran war that are harder to quantify, but no less serious. War spending usually isn't a good investment because it crowds out more productive investments in the nation's well-being. And as we are now learning in real time, it can cause chaos that leads to recessions. It's true that war can often technically increase the size of the economy in the short term as measured by GDP, which tallies consumption, investment, government spending, and net imports. So government spending on war boosts at least one aspect of GDP. Of course, war's other adverse effects can easily offset these GDP gains from government spending, but that's exactly what's happening now with price pressures on households. But even if the Strait of Hormuz miraculously opens and the inflation is short-lived, an increasingly unlikely outcome, spending on the Iraq war will be poor economic stimulus. Yet, rather than making productive investments in our economy that would help ease America's affordability, concerns like extending health tax care credits, the Trump administration is doubling down on a war that won't provide any material benefit to families struggling to make ends meet. I'm gonna stop that right here. I don't know, and I wish I had the video, but I never stopped to look it up. Did y'all see the video where Trump was asked hold up, bro, you got ripped off. I asked a question. He said, didn't in 2020? Yes, that is the rumor that there were farmers who were saying that the government was paying them to destroy crops because of what they call demand destruction caused by the pandemic. There was simply because for the most part the world shut down, there was lower demand for food and everything else. And so instead of letting that stuff rot, they ordered them to certain farmers to destroy their crops to lower the amount of food that would be on the stores because people weren't going to be able to buy it. Yeah, that took place. In fact, I'm pretty sure I put a video up about that. We talked about that back 5 years ago now. So yeah, that's yeah, brother. You remember correctly. But I wanted to talk to here. I wanted to talk to these two articles that I'm gonna be done. African governments need to take urgent action on fertilizer shortages. Tensions in the Strait of Hormuz have slowed fertilizer shipments, which could put the harvest at risk. Here's what African states can do about it. This is from Al Jazeera. So we'll look and see what they say. It says food security in Africa could face major disruptions due to continuing uncertainty in the Strait of Hormuz. The conflict began between the United States, Israel, and Iran is disrupting global fertilizer trade flows and stands to leave millions of African farmers without the ammonia, urea, phosphate, sulfur, and other fertilizer inputs vital to growing more food in sub-Saharan Africa. Y'all know I hate that term sub-Saharan, but it is what it is. Fertilizer shipments passing through the Strait of Hormuz account, for example, for roughly 25% of global ammonia trade and more than 33% of seaborne urea. Even the slightest perceived risk can drive up fertilizer prices. Stall shipments cause a seismic shift in food price inflation. The food insecurity scenario is not new. COVID-19 pandemic disruptions and the war in Ukraine drove fertilizer prices to record highs, exposing how dependent we have become on a handful of export hubs and bottleneck transport routes. About 80% of fertilizer used across sub-Saharan Africa is imported, often at prices much higher than Europe, due to freight, financing, logistics, and also due to the fact that they don't want us to live. Like, let's cut the shenanigans. For many governments, fertilizer security is tied to food security, which is tied to economic security and social stability. Africa's smallholder farmers are often at the forefront of the crisis. They produce nearly 70% of sub-Saharan Africa's food, and unlike large governmental farms, which have cash to secure a supply earlier, a smallholder farmers often are limited to fertilizer options or face steep price hikes. According to the Food Agriculture Organization, even a 10% reduction in fertilizer availability could result in 25% less maize, rice, and wheat grown in sub-Saharan Africa. This could trigger food inflation up to 8% on the continent. In 2022, the African Development Bank Group launched a $1.5 billion African emergency food production facility to help countries respond to supply disruptions amid the war in the Ukraine. The initiative has supported nearly 16 million smallholder farmers in 35 countries with climate smart seed. Oh my goodness, and fertilizer. Let me start right here. I was about to say that we have to look and see who is in charge of this institution and what type of seeds they're using. Climate smart seeds means they're bioengineered, which means they're probably related to Terminator seeds, which means they're probably destroying the soil. I'm just going to say this. We have to learn to not trust our enemies and learn to trust ourselves and unite amongst ourselves. We don't need their science to teach us how to grow food when we originated farming over 6,000 years ago. We have to get back to our natural traditions to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, and defend ourselves from our enemies. Now, when it comes to military technology, we definitely need that because that's how we got in this situation. We were surpassed militarily from a technological standpoint, and that's a wrap, right? That's the reality of the situation. That's how we got here. But as far as the food insecurity and things like that, Black people have been growing food for tens of thousands of years. Right? It's plain and simple. We do not need to follow the ways of our enemies to feed ourselves and our children. Don't need to do it. Ain't necessary. It shouldn't do it, right? But yet here we are. And so it's not just Africa, but if we look at this last article, it says Asia braces for food shortages as Super El Nino Iran war effects collide. I'm just going to read part of this. It says that Asia is entering dangerous summer for food production as scientists warn of Super El Nino suppressing rainfall while the war in Iran drives up energy and fertilizer costs for farmers. So I just thought about this. What Asia needs to do is tell the U.S. to turn on those weather modification machines that they have in their area and make some rain. You know what I'm saying? And I'm laughing, but I'm not joking because, hey, you see what it is. Anyway, it says India's meteorological department has forecast a below average monsoon after 2 successive years of above normal rains. While in Australia, a major wheat producer and exporter, a shortage of farm inputs and persistent dryness have reportedly pushed planting acreage to a 7-year low. Here in quotes, it says simply, food is going to be a big problem. That's from Ganeshkar. Yeah, right. I can't say that. I don't know who that is, but I agree with Ganesh. Whatever. Farmers across South and Southeast Asia are already reeling from soaring fertilizer prices driven up by a shortage of natural gas to make urea, as supplies from Qatar, one of the world's largest producers, have dropped to near zero because of the war. It's very concerning because the year is supposed to be a super El Nino and we are getting into the planting season. The analyst, our friend here, Yanis Sakar, shout out to him because I'm butchering the heck out of his name. Founder of India-based research and advisory firm Trends Research, which specializes in commodity futures. This is going to be widespread across South and Southeast Asia. There will be dryness everywhere. El Nino is a name for a climatic phenomenon that causes periodic warming of the tropical Pacific Ocean, shifting global weather patterns and leading to heavy rain in some areas of bringing drought. Let me ask you a question, right? Because some of y'all are older than me, some of y'all are younger. Do y'all remember? Because it's in my lifetime. They started talking about El Nino seemingly in the 80s, I think. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong. And if that's the case, did they not understand this phenomenon before then? Or you get where the story is, where I'm going with this story, right? So one thing we see is because of what's going on, there's going to be food shortages apparently in the areas where non-white people live. So non-white people around the world are in danger of starvation this year, thanks to the war and El Nino. Can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Cannot make this stuff up. So you got to count me a skeptic where whenever something something that negatively affects our people especially more than it affects other people, and there's no legitimate reason why that should be the case. And in this case, I think that's where we are with that type of weather effect. Now, I could be completely wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. It would not be the first time. But I just find it mighty suspicious that in the midst of this war that El Nino is going to affect all the places where black, brown, red, and yellow people live, and they're going to face drought and starvation and all this stuff. And yeah, it's going to be worse off for them than anywhere else. Now, what about us here? Brother RPG says, yeah, El Nino. It's some new age. Yeah, I was wondering because I just remember hearing about it like when I was already old enough to understand stuff, and I don't remember hearing about it in my childhood at all. I did, in fact, like we do those science classes that would cover that type of thing. Yeah, that didn't. It either didn't exist or they didn't teach it when I was in school. So make of that what you will. So let me say this. I think that I have covered this enough, and I've given people enough warning. And I'll say this: because of the planting season, there's probably a 6-month lead-in time to the real rough effects as far as the price of food and possible food shortages. I would look for real trouble around football season, unfortunately. So in the meantime, I expect prices to go up, not just for gas, but for food in general. And yeah, man, it's just gonna be, things just gonna get a little bit harder. You know what I'm saying? Increasingly over time. The thing that I notice most of the time in the US is that when things get bad, generally, they are done incrementally. So the government tries to stabilize things enough to the point of no real cracks in American society show. Right? The cracks are there, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm gonna say this. I'm planning on being on Tuesday. Because I just saw some more information on that David case. I'm going to cover that some more, probably in a video. And I'm going to try to come on Thursday with a SBL talk. I have not talked about the Megan Thee Stallion thing. I'm going to talk about that, but not in the way that I think other people are talking about. But I'm gonna talk about that Thursday, unless something happens in between now and then. And if you all have any subjects, any ideas for anything that y'all want me to talk about, y'all just let me know. You can either shoot me an email or you can leave it in the comment section. Anything like that. I will. Oh, yeah, that's what I got to talk about. Yeah, I got to talk about what's going on in Mali. The defense minister was assassinated by forces that we believe are connected to colonial forces. They were able to repel the attack, but the attack was quite sophisticated, and various groups that used to be enemies were suddenly united. So we got to talk about that because that looks really suspect. So don't forget, again, this is The Center. I'm your host, DC Radical. You can follow me on Instagram at DC.Radical1, on Twitter at DC_Radical_ONE, on OTW2 when it's up and running again at DC Radical1. I'll be there. If you enjoy this type of information, Cashapp me $DC Radical1, and Zelle at straightblackpride_DC at protonmail.com, which is also the email address. I'm just say this, brothers and sisters. We're under attack everywhere, all the time, globally. And any analysis, any discussion, any thoughts on anything that don't take into account that we're not even at war, we're being war upon. Yeah, now some places they're fighting back, like the AES is fighting back, but nowhere else in the world that I know of black people fighting back. There are people. I told y'all a long time ago there was a book called "Someone's Trying to Kill You." Well, the book may be out of print, from all I know, but nothing has changed in that regard. Someone or some people are trying to eliminate the black man and black woman on planet Earth. Not just in America, not just on the continent or Caribbean or even Asia, right? No matter where you are, somebody's trying to get rid of you. And as I have stated before, here in America, at least, our reproduction is down. Right? The quality of people we're producing is also not that great. So we need black love to survive. I know I haven't talked a lot about black love because I ain't been feeling it, but it's the reality of that's how we come into existence. And we need more, not less, which means that men and women have to show the capacity for growth and development. If not, then we're just all dead. That's pretty much how it works. Hate to tell you that, but that's how it works. Because every other group of people, they want to be with their people. And I'm gonna give you all an example because I saw a week ago. Happened to be out, and I wasn't sure what I saw at first, but it turned out to be a family. And it was mostly girls and a couple of boys. And some of the girls were Ethiopian looking. And some of the boys were Puerto Rican looking. Now, y'all gonna say, well, DC, were all these people related? Most of these people appear to be related. But there was one Asian girl who obviously wasn't physically related to these people. So I look up and I see the mother, and she's European looking. She's some kind of European and some type of Caucasian. Then I see the father, and he's black dude. My point is that black dude and that European female were able to produce all types of nationalities with those multiple children, but none of them looked specifically black. So he had pretty much was on the way to destroying his gene pool. The only good thing out of that I could see is that based on his daughter's reaction to being around an area where she obviously didn't grow up in, and being around a couple of black men, is that she's attracted to black men. So one of his daughters will at least re-blacken the bloodline. So y'all gonna say, DC, what they got to do with anything? What they got to do with anything is we are producing more hybrids and mixed people and all this than black people. Now I know that's not actually the case, but that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. We are voluntarily destroying ourselves to try to fit in with enemies or whatever. I don't even know at this point what it is. This is self-hatred is killing us. That's what I'm trying to say. Self-hatred is killing us. We need to produce more black people. We need more black babies. We need more strong black warriors. We need more strong warrior sisters. Sisters are taking longer to reproduce than they're reproducing with dudes that shouldn't be reproduced with. Meanwhile, brothers who are solid, brothers who are warriors, and brothers who are doing the work ain't reproducing. We got this thing all out of whack. So hopefully Thursday I'll be able to talk about that Thursday evening. That's the plan, right? So we're on the lookout. Tuesday we're gonna talk about the Mali situation and Africa. And then Thursday we'll do an SBL talk. And I'm gonna try to get one in Wednesday because I will not be on a Saturday. So be on the lookout for that. I should have at least the thumbnail and the time and the listing and everything else by, but hopefully I'll have it done by tomorrow. Tomorrow's Sunday, right? Yeah, hopefully I have it done by tomorrow. So with that, brothers and sisters, man, I thank you all for listening. I know I did a lot of off-topic subjects, but a lot of things is going on, a lot of things I'm observing, and I just had to get those out and get your opinion on those issues. So with that, I say a BB for ODA and straight black pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cash App is $DCRadical1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A BB for ODA and straight black pride.